Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Platitude Era podcast. This is our year in review, our top 10 movies of 2019. And starting off with number 10 on our list, it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, for me personally, I feel like this was a nice return to form. It's always nice to see a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's kind of the perfect setting. I think most people enjoy that kind of classic Hollywood era of 60s and 70s of yore. I think it's a little slow for most people. I only saw the movie once. I'm pretty sure on rewatchings, it probably holds up a little more. The ending has the biggest payoff, but I think watching a Tarantino movie is always an event. It's always a worthwhile trip to the movies. It kind of reminds you why you go to the movies. This is what an auteur makes. Like, I guess, you know, American or, Hollywood cinema is now just, brands and blockbusters and stuff like that. And then you don't really see much of like an actual filmmaker going out and making a movie. So this feels a little bit of that, and then I guess our next entry will also lead into that as well.
And with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's once again, Quentin Tarantino doing what he does best. Whenever he makes his certain films, he makes that look cool. For example, Pulp Fiction, he made gangster movies look cool. Kill Bill, he made Japanese samurai kung fu films look cool. And in this one, he makes the 70s look cool. That whole, you know, period of trying to be an actor in the 70s, trying to come back. He just, whatever he covers, whatever movie he makes, it takes him a while to make a movie, to write the story, to film it. He takes his time. It's because he makes it look cool. And then moving on to number 9, this is a movie that had a few screenings in the movie theater, but it got heavily pushed on Netflix. We're talking about The Irishman. So why is this one number 9?
Well, for me because I think Goodfellas is one of my favorite movies of all time. Casino's up there too. For me, it feels kind of like a rehash, and then leading into that, The Irishman feels like another rehash. It's like Scorsese doing another Scorsese movie, like his traditionally how he does Scorsese movies. I guess Wolf of Wall Street's that too, but it feels different enough. Where he's returning to his roots for this one, like traditional gangster style, drama that's like an epic essentially that leads through his whole life. It does feel like a return to form. Maybe a little bit lesser than, but it's Scorsese doing what Scorsese did best, and kind of how he made his name in the industry.
Another reason why we like The Irishman, it's because before we had Quentin Tarantino making certain types of cool films, we had Martin Scorsese who would make cool films before him, and it kind of has that similar style, gangster films, the violence, the swearing. And this one was Martin Scorsese, and Netflix was the right combination. Netflix gave him his budget, and they also let him run free. So he did what he does best, like you said, return to form. And also, it was just great to see him work with his original crew that he's worked with before, Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro. And this time we got to see, I think, is this the first time we get to see Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Joe Pesci working together with Martin Scorsese?
I think so. I can't really think of a time when Pacino worked with Scorsese. I don't think.
I can't think of it either. If you guys know, write in the comments section. But it was just very interesting, this story, how he's able to blend a linear storyline, and then he's also able to go back, to complete the story. I liked how they talked about certain characters, and they were side characters, but he still filled in the story. There was like a little small text that's like, oh, this is what happened to this character. Number 8 on our top 10 list is Doctor Sleep. Now, why is Doctor Sleep on the list?
Well, I guess you want to kind of change of pace. You want a little bit of horror, I guess. And whereas what It Chapter 2 failed to do for me and probably failed to do for you, it didn't really capture any of that like classic Stephen King essence or something. It wasn't that. It was just kind of dragged on and felt boring. Whereas this movie, Doctor Sleep, it was long, but you didn't really feel that, and it was just kind of a compelling enough story. It kind of feels like a kid's book in a way because it's about a little girl and her adventures and being like the chosen one or whatever. But for me, it felt like a nice enough. I think I mentioned this in a review. It was like a nice enough kind of rehash of stuff from The Shining as well as introducing new stuff. Watching the trailers, I remember thought it looked stupid, like, oh, Rebecca Ferguson is the bad guy because she wears a stupid hat. And that felt stupid and silly to me, but it was, I don't know, an interesting, compelling, like this band of roving gypsies who want to suck out the shining from people. It was just interesting. It felt kind of, it had some of that Stephen King batshit nonsense. That's like, oh, this is some of the weird cocaine-fueled nonsense that Stephen King used to do, but, you know, it found a way to feel, you know, compelling enough to keep me interested. And I think this is the best Stephen King adaptation of 2019.
And also, Dr. Sleep. They got the right director to work on this project, a fan of scary movies who's had some success in the scary movies that he's done. He did that TV show on Netflix about the haunted house. He did Oculus. He did Origin, the Ouija board movie. Is that right?
Yeah, Ouija, or was it Origin? Who cares? The good Ouija movie.
Yeah. Well, he's a true fan of horror movies, so I like how he was able to blend things that we like to create a fun experience at the movie theater. This is one of the reasons why you go to the movie theater, to have fun, and this story was very fun as far as, you know, you had a little bit of a quest movie, you had a little bit of X-Men in it where you had these people with abilities, and there's certain levels of abilities. Some people have high abilities like Jean Grey, other people have slightly lower abilities like other mutants. I mean, I don't want to do one parallel and just have people get more confused, but you know, it was a lot of fun. And now we're moving on to number 7, and number 7 is very interesting. Tell us why the movie Ready or Not is on the list.
It was a nice surprise. Every so often a movie comes up that really doesn't have much buzz or anything behind it. It's just a trailer that pops up on the movie theater and like, oh, that's a interesting thing. I don't know if I'll see it or not. And then you wind up going, it's like comes out in the middle of August and you don't have any other choices but this movie. It's like, hey, it's got some pretty decent reviews. It's got a little bit of word of mouth going. I'll check it out. And it becomes a nice little fun surprise for you where you walk in knowing nothing about the movie. And then you walk out like, wow, that was just a lot of fun for a movie. And that's pretty much where I walked away from. It was just kind of funny, kind of dark. Just, it was a kind of nice little perfect storm of things for me. Just all these things coalescing together to make a fun romp at the movies.
Another reason why this movie's on the list, it's because it makes scary movies fun. It's not what you expect. You walk in expecting one movie. It's like, oh my gosh, the premise for this movie, it's probably like a short film, 5-minute. How are they going to expand it into a 2-hour movie or an hour-and-a-half movie? And you watch it, and it's really fun, and it takes you on a ride. And this is another reason why you go to the movies, to go on a ride. And that's what Ready or Not did. And then next on our list, number 6. Number 6 is, oh, I'm glad this one's on the list, Good Boys. Now, why is this one on the list?
I mean, I think the majority of the list you'll find my response is it was a fun time at the movies. And for me, I think this might have been the most fun I had at the movies. Just, it, like, notoriously, I hated Booksmart, which was a rehash of Superbad, and this movie comes in as a rehash of Superbad, but it does a nice enough, interesting twist where it's about kids, like, when they're trying to get their first kiss instead of being late. It's a nice enough twist on, like, the classic kind of dirty high school raunchy comedy where it's, like, teens, preteens or whatever, you know, they're 12, 11, they're just in middle school. And it's just a fun enough twist on that, and it has enough heart, and it has enough humor and laughs where it you know, it's a nice enough genre twist, and it feels refreshing and new versus Booksmart, which I felt kind of just rehashed old tropes.
Another reason why this movie's on our list, it's because it has that fun factor again, where it takes you back to your youth and how you're discovering things as a little kid for the first time, and there's things that you think you know and that you want to grow up fast, but you know, it's cranked up to, what is it, cranked up to a 10 or an 11, because there's some things here that are over exaggerated. And you know, I like those little references that they put in there to other movies, like the kids do this one thing with their babysitter, and the babysitter's chasing them, and they have that little, hey, let's do a little quick throwback to Terminator 2, where, you know, she's chasing them and it looks like something like the T-1000 chasing John Connor. So it has all those little fun little things sprinkled throughout the movie. Number 5 on our list. Oh my God, I'm so glad this movie's on our list. Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah.
Elaborate more, Whites, on our list.
I think as far as the I don't remember what else is on the well, I think I do. But like as far as the kind of Oscar baity movies, I think this one's the most fun. Just because like sometimes you can get kind of boring, like just like oh this is a sad story, or nah. This is kind of fun and action paced. It's an interesting story that nobody really hears about. You don't really hear much about the racing world. I'd seen like a documentary about this movie or like the original story, and it was compelling enough to be made into a movie. It started off as a book too, but it's fun. It's well made. It keeps you interested about a topic that I think most people generally have no understanding or interest in. It's well performed by two actors who have a pretty good tenure in on their resume or whatever on their IMDb. But like it's an interesting because you'd think Matt Damon, he's the kind of the higher caliber actor, he must be the star, but it's really more about Christian Bale, who's this kind of side character who's nobody's ever heard of and has such an interesting story that it's good to bring this character into the limelight, this real person into the limelight to an audience that maybe has never heard of him.
Another reason why this movie's on our list is because it's got a combination of everything. It's got that spirit of competition, not just on the racetrack, but in the corporate world. And you got these very dynamic characters that are working together to accomplish something. You got that fun little conflict that's enjoyable. I know there's not only a rivalry between Ford and Ferrari, but amongst the same people on their team. Yet they fight, they have trouble getting along, but yet they come together for the common cause, which is we need to beat Ferrari. Then you have those really fun racing scenes that take you inside the movie. And then also, not only because this is a fun movie, but it also leaves it for, different slight interpretations. For example, spoiler alert here, the way that the movie ends, you think, oh man, one of these characters got screwed. But, as you're looking at it, you realize, well, he's in good spirits. So, maybe he wasn't as screwed as bad as he was, maybe he continued to get work because of what he was able to accomplish. Like, sure, he got screwed in one way, but maybe he was compensated for it in another way.
Yeah, it's a traditional formula that you've seen time and time again. And like I said, it's kind of, it covers familiar territory as far as like an Oscar baity movie, but it's enough of a new enough, unfamiliar enough topic that it can feel fresh and interesting. And these characters are interesting. It's just a bunch of guys who are essentially saying F you to Ferrari, and just kind of a classic American spirit movie, I guess, of just like a bunch of guys busting their asses just to say F you for no reason other than because we're prideful.
And then next on our list, oh wow, this is a really good list. I'm proud of this list. Our next movie on the list, number 4, is Avengers Endgame. Now, of course, this movie was going to be on our list, and it was just a matter of when was it going to show up on our list. Now, how did it end up at number 4?
I think, well, because you'd think it would be at number 1 because, oh my god, it's the biggest movie of the year, but it dips a little bit. We didn't talk about this in a review because I didn't remember jack shit about it because we talked about it like months afterwards.
And it's still not up?
You never uploaded it? Interesting. No. Then fuck it, who cares? But then never do. But just it has this perfect combination of closing off ties that were a decade old of storylines or whatever. It had a little bit of, it was kind of a greatest hits. It was like Avengers greatest hits because we're going back and we're seeing all this old stuff happening. It kind of has that fan servicey stuff, but it pays off well enough because you're like, oh yeah, this is finally happening, and this. It's just the perfect confluence of things. I think that's the second time I'm using that word today. Of things that are going on. It was 10 years in the making, and it wasn't a disappointment. It did everything pretty much that you wanted to. A few hiccups, I guess, but for the most part, a well-worthy payoff to the franchise.
Yeah, this movie was really fun. There were a lot of those comic book moments that you were excited for. It had a really good blend of action as well as drama. There was some of that the aftermath of Thanos' snap and how people are coping with half the population being gone. Those really, really exciting moments. There were several moments that were exciting. The one thing why it is where it is on the list and it couldn't be higher was they did that thing in movies where we wrote ourselves into a corner. How do we get out of it? Spoiler, time travel.
I don't know. Back to the Future doesn't feel like it wrote itself into a corner, but that's you, I guess.
Well, Back to the Future started it, and then it did it very, very well, and then now it was just like, yeah, time travel. Unless you can do something really, really awesome with time travel, surpass Back to the Future. Please, I don't want to see any more time travel because it seems like it's like get out of jail free card. All right, moving on to number 3. Oh, Shazam. Now, why Shazam number 3?
Just like in previous entries, I'll say it again. It was a fun time at the movies. I just like DC had been just whiffing constantly with their movies, and then they finally come out like, we're just screw it because superhero movies are supposed to be fun. We're gonna make a fun superhero movie, and this is a perfect blend for me of comedy and superhero movie or comic book movie. Just it had plenty of laughs. It was kind of interesting and creative enough. It was once again unexpected because who the hell is Shazam? Why should I care about Shazam? And it's just a fun character of just it's big with a superhero, and that's kind of what you need, I guess.
Shazam was a fun film at the movie theater, and it does that nostalgia factor again when you're a little kid and you're imagining what is it like to have superpowers. That's what this movie does. It takes you back, and also it does a good blend of other films that you haven't seen in a while. It's that combination of superhero films and the fun kind of superhero films, not serious like Superman. And it's got that blend of big. You're a little kid, and then you wake up the next day and you're a grown up. And to add to that, the cherry on top is you have superpowers, and you're learning how to use your superpower. So it's got that blend of humor of, oh, can I do this? Can I not do this? How do I react when I discover I can fly or I have lightning? And you got to give it extra points for being one of those superhero film movies where even at the end of the movie, the superhero still doesn't know what to call himself or his name. Oh, and don't forget about that very humorous cameo by another superhero in the movie. Spoiler alert, Superman makes a cameo in the movie.
Yeah, but you don't see his face, so it technically doesn't count.
Which is fun because it was right around the same point where Henry Cavill was leaving, or they wanted to remove Henry Cavill.
Oh, you mean Geralt of Rivia.
All right, now we're going on to number 2 here on our list. And, most controversial film of the year has to be in the most controversial spot on our list. Joker. Why is Joker number 2 on the list?
I think this movie had a ton riding on it. It couldn't be middling because then, you'd upset everybody. It could be a big pile of turd, which I guess some people would be excited for, or it had to be the greatest thing in the universe. And it's not the greatest thing in the universe, but it is a perfect, kind of perfect maybe for 2019, maybe of all time, I don't know. But for such an iconic character to do a semi-origin story of, I think they did exactly what they needed to for this character of just this weird, down on his luck kind of guy, and then it turns into like the unreliable narrator thing, and you see what he becomes and you see how he gets there, and it's interesting because you're kind of sympathetic for the character, but also you don't like the character. It kind of did Joker right, and I think that's exactly what this movie needed to do. I'm looking at you, Jared Leto. There's a difference between how you do Joker the right way and how you do him the wrong way. And this movie, I'm going to say, when you put the right kind of method actor into this role, can make this a worthwhile character. Now, it's up for debate whether or not, he competes with Heath Ledger, but I'd say at the very least, he probably, for most people, surpasses Nicholson.
Well, this is our top 10 list, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is how we rank them. Everybody has to come into a certain position in the movie. Joker came in second, but I'm sure it could have gone anywhere. There were things about this movie that it did do right. For a character that divides people within the universe that it lives in, Gotham City, whether some people support the Joker's methods and ideas and other people don't. So it's pretty much that division, kind of a parallel what's going on here. This movie has the ability to unite film fans because there's so many levels to this movie, and when you discuss it with other people, it's not like, hey, your opinion's wrong or what you're thinking about this movie is wrong, but it's, hey, I could see what you're saying and it makes sense, and then now what I thought questions what I think about the movie. Because you can see this movie as the way that it goes through the motions. the story of this character, or you could see it as, like how you said, the unreliable narrator where he's lying, or maybe this is you're looking into his mind. And also the way that the movie starts to end, it's like, oh, this could be a lead into another DC movie that was made in the 80s. And it's interesting how it takes place in that time. And all those theories too, where it's like, wait a minute, does this mean that this character is tied to another character? And there's just so many things for a movie that just you can overanalyze it and analyze it differently, and certain things within the movie, oh, this means something, and you can talk it with other people and go on for hours. I'm giving this movie more time than I have allocated because it was an event.
This is Schrodinger's comic book movie. It both can and cannot be associated with what it's supposed to be associated with. And I guess, that's probably what you want from a Joker origin movie.
All right. We did it. We're at number one. But before we get to number one, we got honorable mentions. Where do you want to start? From the top of the list or the bottom of the list?
Well, it can really go in any order. These are just movies that were, that I did enjoy myself watching, but not necessarily. And they don't deserve the highest merits of whatever nonsense two jackoffs can talk about of.
All right, here's one honorable mention: The Upside.
Yeah. This was because okay, people didn't like Kevin Hart or think he's some kind of he makes shitty schlocky comedies or whatever. And then you see it has really negative reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, like a 40% or something for the critics. But then, it has a 90 whatever with the audience. So you go to see it. It's the perfect timing for this kind of movie because it's not quite a Christmas movie, but it could have been just like, it's like that kind of winter movie where you go and see it. It takes place in the wintertime. You're in the nice heated movie theater. And you're just like, I'm just in to watch like kind of a warm, heartfelt movie in the middle of the frigid cold of the 64-degree California breeze. Oh God, I'm freezing my nips off here. So you watch this movie and it kind of has enough heart, it has enough humor. It has they're both, Kevin Hart, you could say what you will about him, but I think he's a pretty good actor. He can deliver on the comedy and the drama. Bryan Cranston's already a master at his work. So you put these two actors together and you put them on screen and it was good dynamite. It was just, I think that movie is kind of criminally underrated. I'm not saying it's the best movie in the universe, but it's just the perfect confluence of things that happened, of a January movie, of good performances, of a nice, light, warm-hearted enough story. It kind of sat with me. I liked it, and fuck you to the critics for rating it so low, because it's a perfectly serviceable movie. Check it out if you haven't. Rent it if it's on discount or whatever, or wait for it to come on cable. It's fine. It's good. I liked it when I saw it at the time. It stuck with me. Look at the upside of things.
Uh-oh. Got another honorable mention here. Late entry. Hobbs and Shaw. Fast and the Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah, I'm thinking this isn't the step, but this is the in between of Fast and the Furious going from like kind of serious to just straight up stupid bonkers nonsense. It's right there. It's right on that line because it's essentially like even in the trailers they say it's the Black Superman or whatever. You have Idris Elba playing a comic book villain, and then you have two guys who can essentially kick ass no matter what they do and don't, their bodies don't follow the laws of physics and they'll never get injured or anything, and they just do crazy stupid shit, and then the movie ends in a weird slow-mo fight. It's just
and also why this movie is an honorable mention. It's usually Hollywood has that idea or that stereotype that each main actor there is selfish and they only want their popularity to grow. And this also has that really fun example where it's like, hey, we brought in this guy for a cameo, and the guy that has a cameo in this movie is hijacking our film, and we're gonna let him do it. So honorable mention, we have John Wick.
The other side of the coin from Hobbs and Shaw is John Wick, which is like, it's just kind of a spectacle, and all of its like practical fight choreography. You have the horse chase, and then you have like a dog obstacle course scene, and then you just have like, people throwing knives back and forth at each other, and all this gunplay, and just all this interesting martial arts. It's just everything that like old school Hollywood probably used to do with its stunt choreography of just like getting guys and beating the shit out of each other over and over again until you're like, okay, we're ready to shoot it, we're ready to put it on screen. And then you see this perfect like ballet of people kicking each other's asses on screen. And I think it's kind of, I guess that's what action movies have been missing. It's just been a bunch of kind of garbage CG or just like guys not actually doing anything or being in front of a green screen or whatever. But then this pits the actors in the shit, and you get actual like stunt teams like come and it's like, okay, and I want to punch you in there. So then you just have all these actors who are working their asses off to choreograph all these different fights, and they're all creative and they're all interesting and they're all kind of heart pounding and they're all just kind of just edge of your seat thrills, and you're like, that is all actually happening. I mean, they're not shooting each other for reals, but I mean, those dogs are biting those guys. Thank God through the padding underneath their suits.
And then another honorable mention we have after John Wick, it's Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Yeah, I mean, MCU Marvel Studios, they just know how to do Spider-Man right. I mean, the first half of the movie for me is a little slow because you don't really see any Spider-Man until the second half. But then to bring in a character that's kind of iconic, but for the comic book nerds who really like this rogues gallery of villains and like, we'd never see him in a movie, he's too weird. But then you put him in and you do him just right, because at the end of the day, Mysterio is just like a guy in a mocap suit and with a bunch of drones. Spoiler, but whatever. You should have seen that movie if you haven't. But yeah, I mean, like, just you do Mysterio right. You just do just kind of crazy bonkers visuals right, and I think that's kind of what people want. It's like, it's not just about you need to have young kid Spider-Man who's in over his head and doesn't know what to be doing, but then you also need the villain. Like, all of the villains are weird guys in animal suits, or in this case, a guy with a fishbowl helmet, and you just have him do crazy illusionist stuff, and you just have just interesting visual stuff that you wouldn't imagine seeing outside of a video game, and you put it in a movie in front of a general movie-going audience, and like, wow, Mysterio's cool. Look at all this cool shit. And it's a guy in a fucking green suit that looks like an alien.
And also, Spider-Man: Far From Home had the difficult task of following up Avengers Endgame. How do you follow that up? And it didn't disappoint. It did it right. And then, lastly on our honorable mentions, Toy Story 4.
Yeah, for Toy Story 4, it's interesting because for most people, Toy Story 3 was already a perfect wrap-up for, Andy and the toys and all that. So this just feels like a cash grab. Like, Disney, you're already doing it with Aladdin, you're doing it with Lion King, you did it with Dumbo, now you're doing it with another Toy Story movie. But I guess the guys at Pixar, they say, we're not going to do another Toy Story unless we have a story to tell. And they did nice enough, not necessarily a twist, but just a story that hasn't been told, which is, for Woody, what does Woody do when he's no longer the favorite? So then you put him on this journey of him coming to terms with no longer being someone's favorite, and what a toy would do that in that aspect of their so-called life.
And it's interesting how in all 4 Toy Story films, it's always been Woody's story, Woody's arc.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sadly, now we have to get to number 1 of our top 10. Can I get one of those really cool vacation movie drum rolls? Number 1. Top 10 film of 2019 is Parasite.
Yeah. I'd heard a lot of buzz about this movie from podcasts and such of like, oh, you should see Parasite. It's really good. It's the Korean guy that made this movie, and he also made Snowpiercer. And just to reiterate other entries into the list of the top 10 list is like, oh, it's about auteurs coming back and, doing what they do, which is making like a good film. So I go and I hear a lot of buzz about this movie. I'm like, okay, I got to see that. It's only playing at the like kind of, the indie movie theater with only half of a screen available and no concession stand, or you go to the super expensive high-end movie theaters that's kind of pretentious and obnoxious. Those are your only options, and you got to drive 50 miles out just to see it. But yeah, you go in, walk, and they're like, oh, just we're not going to say anything about it. Just go in with unknown expectations, and I'm like, okay, I'll see what it is. And you go in, it's like Parasite. Maybe it's a scary movie. I don't know. We'll see. And then you go in, and it's such like. This is kind of what movies need to be or should have been, because I'm watching this movie and you don't really know where this movie's going to go. It kind of starts off, it's a kind of a comedy, and it's kind of dark, and then it's kind of a drama, and it's kind of a thriller, but it just takes you on this journey because you're following this character, and then you follow these characters, and then you're following these characters, and then something happens to these characters, and now you have this other element going on, and it's just all these different things you never saw coming, and it's just a completely unexpected film. but all of it seems like logical and reasonable. It's not just like throwing garbage at the screen to subvert your expectations. It's all things that make sense. That's all set up and all paid off, and it's just really good filmmaking. Because it's just normally I'm not the kind of person to analyze films properly. Like, oh, what's the meaning of this scene? But it's kind of I'm not saying simple to disparage the movie, but it's simple enough because it's understandable. Like, I mean, it's a Korean film. Like, what's a dumb redneck, white collar, blue collar Joe Schmo like me know nothing about Korean movies, but you go in and you watch this and it just comes at you and it's all these things that are happening in this movie and it's so easily understood even though they're speaking different language. And I guess that's the point of film, is to transcend any language, any culture, anything, and you just can watch this movie, understand the story, and be like blown away by it. And that's how I felt. This is one of those movies that it's kind of once in a lifetime, once in a generation, where it just kind of refreshes you to the concept of what the point of film is. It's like, this is what a movie can be, and I'm like, yeah. Remember when movies were good and not a bunch of garbage CG or whatever? So for the people who want to complain against the the industrial movie complex, this is the movie of like a guy who takes the time to make a movie, who plans out and writes down every single shot they want to do and have everything, things be set up and paid off, everything to come together in a movie, maybe even, a confluence of things coming together in this movie. And it's just a well-crafted movie. This is what a well-crafted, not just a movie, a film is to be. And like not just best like foreign film, but just one of the best films I've seen in maybe years.
And two things that this movie has going for it. If you're somebody that wants to aspire to be a filmmaker, you watch this and it motivates you and inspires you and says, oh, I want to be a filmmaker now. I want to tell stories like this. And number two, it does something very brilliant that very few movies do. And every good movie has this, where the movie starts one place and by the end, it's in a completely different direction. But this was so subtle where you're watching it and it's slowly dragging you without you noticing where you're going. And then by the time the movie ends, you realize you're like, oh my God, I'm in a completely different place and I don't know how I got here.
It's almost like movies need to have character arcs where characters change or start off one way and then up in a completely different way.
And this is a must-see film because when I went to the movie theater, and people would see my ticket, the guy cutting my ticket, he's like, oh, you're seeing Parasite, you're going to like it, or I love this movie. And then you go buy the popcorn. Hey, what movie are you seeing? Oh, you're seeing Parasite? Oh, man, you're going to like it. So you have everybody like trying to discuss the movie with you, Parasite, but they can't. They're biting their lip because it's like, oh, you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's just because it's just such a good enough story because you want to talk about it, but then again, because it starts and ends at completely different places. Like, it's not something you can really foresee, so you can't just say, oh yeah, and then this happened. Like, you'll love when this happens. You're like, how did that happen? And then you're completely spoiled on the whole movie, or just, it's like, I'm just gonna wait until that happens. Wait, when's that gonna happen? Just, I don't know. It's a good movie. That's all that needs to be said. It's just it's well crafted. Characters, plot, even the shooting, framing, the location, everything it just works perfectly.
And then just the way the characters exist in their little world.
Mm-hmm.
So Parasite is a don't miss it, must watch it as soon as you can, however you can, whether it's at the movie theater, if it's still there, or when it comes out on video, rent it or buy it. But this is definitely a movie you have to see. And that's it. That's our top 10 movies of 2019. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. That's what everyone says. And don't forget to like this video. Bye.